Greetings, Jellyspoons. Welcome back to another Monday Madness, starting the week off right with some chaos. This week, I am in a Peter Pan mood. Admittedly, I am usually in a Peter Pan mood, but it is exceptionally strong this week because I have been listening to all of the musicals and watching several clips of the shows online, rereading the play quite a lot, and so last week's musical episode really did me in because I have been, listening to them pretty much non-stop. So, Peter Pan theme this week, methinks. I am going to chatter a little bit, hopefully directly to you, but if I get too caught up in doing the makeup, there will be a voice-over of disembodied Moku. What I want to talk about is Peter Pan as a character, but very specifically, the sort of darker, more strange aspects of his character and the writing, and also how death itself is a very prominent factor in the story that people might not realise is quite as prominent as it is. So the dark oddities and deathness of Peter Pan is what we'll be discussing today, and while I'm doing so, I am going to be trying out some different Peter Pan looks. I'm going to put on my normal cosplay first and then go and film a bunch of videos and then come back. And then I am going to try 3 different makeup looks inspired by 3 different ways that Peter Pan could have met his demise in the story. Hey dog. Don't just look at me like you're cute. You're making noises. Yeah, it's fine. They think you're cute too. It's fine. So, look number 1 is going to be my normal Peter Pan aesthetic. Look number 2 is going to be, well, maybe I won't tell you. I will leave it as a surprise. Anyone who knows the story, you might be able to guess. There are 3 prominent moments where Peter Pan could have died. So I'll let you guess what those are and what the makeup looks might be. Chuck them in the comments, do a thread, chuck your guesses in, and then tell me if you were right later on in the video. So, I'm going to start putting on my usual Peter Pan cosplay. So I am going to go and grab my wig and my get-up, and I shall return. Also, I should mention my Ko-fi and my Patreon. I've been informed that mentioning this at the beginning of the video is the more professional thing to do, and seeing as I am pretending to be a professional, here we go. I have Ko-fi and I have Patreon. If you would like to join me on either of those, come hither, join the Jellyspoon Chaos Legion. It's a thing, and we're going to have it on t-shirts one day. If you'd like to be committed to me on a monthly basis, terrifying as that may seem, you can toddle over to Patreon, where my Patreon starts at like $3 a month. So if you have that and you would like to donate to me and enjoy this chaos, see things early, get to vote on the things that I do, see behind the scene pictures, and get dog photos, insert dog photo here, dog encouragement. So if you'd like to do that and get all my chaos on a monthly basis and help me decide things and do things, then come and join me on Patreon. If, however, like me, you're a bit like, commitment, then I completely understand, and instead I have Ko-fi. On Ko-fi you can throw me support as often or as little as you would like. I will equally adore you just as much if you just want to hang out and watch these videos and leave some comments and say hi. So Ko-fi and Patreon links will be in the doodly-doo description. If you can support me, absolutely amazing. If not, welcome to the video. Let's do this. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm wearing my pyjama bottoms. I will change into my official green leafy trousers, but I will change into them later while I'm doing my makeup. I find it safer to wear my pyjama bottoms so I don't get makeup on everything, and also you can't tell anyway, and a bunch of the videos I am going to do in this outfit are going to go straight onto TikTok, so yeah, it is the TikTok cosplayer way. If you cannot see below the waist, we are probably just wearing pajamas. Sorry to burst any bubbles of illusion there. We don't always do it properly. I should probably say right off the bat that my favourite media for Peter Pan is the play. And while I am chatting to you today throughout this video in voiceover or just in me here, I will be referencing the play predominantly, and then the book Barry wrote afterwards, Peter and Wendy. I'll be referencing that one as well. So if any of it doesn't make any sense to you, it might be because you've read a more modern adaptation of the book, or it might be because you have only seen the movies, which again is absolutely fine. If you've enjoyed the story, however you've enjoyed it, is absolutely great, but my personal preferences will always be for the play, which is in here, Peter Pan, or The Boy Who Would Not Grow Up. I don't just do notes in the margins, man. My notes are everywhere. This is the book, Peter and Wendy, the original text, the whole text, but it's also got a bunch of annotations and notes and facts and pictures and so many different cool, amazing things. And again, you can see how many sticky notes and annotations and things I have in here as well. These are predominantly my sources. I don't think a lot of people actually realise quite how dark the story of Peter Pan can be. Now, considering that there's all these like conspiracy theories and videos that I've watched and vaguely debunked in the most loving way possible, where they go on about Peter being like the spirit of death and the Grim Reaper, or Peter being some kind of sexual awakening. Could we not? Like, Peter Pan isn't even asexual. He's not old enough to have asexuality. Peter Pan is a child. A literal child. The dark stuff that I want to talk about with Peter Pan are the dark parts of his character that either don't get enough recognition or just don't get any at all. One of the first things I want to talk about is actually one of my favourite lines from the play. It was included in the 1928 adaptation of the play script when Barry added it in for an actress called Jean Forbes-Robertson, and I'm so sorry if I butchered that name. But he put it in for this actress who was described as the most eerie and ethereal of all Peter Pans. Having seen pictures and read about it, I agree, and I like it. So my favourite line is a stage direction. It's like a note, and it comes after Wendy has tried to throw her arms around Peter because he has just said that he has no mother. He's not particularly bothered, but Wendy tries to hug him and Peter recoils back from her and says, "You mustn't touch me." And then there's a stage direction in brackets which says he is never touched by anyone in the play. I am obsessed with how that would change every aspect of the performance if you were to stick to that one stage direction. Peter Pan is never touched by anyone in the entire show. It would mean that Peter Pan, the ethereal boy, the eternal child who has joys the rest of us can never ever ever know, is quite literally untouchable. Out of reach for enemies wishing to strike him down. He is out of reach of time trying to grow him up in the dull grey adult world. And he's also untouchable for those naively attempting to get closer to him and form attachments. He is the untouchable boy. So he is untouched by anyone and everyone, and he likes it that way. He actively recoils from it. He doesn't seek out touch and comfort. It doesn't faze him. It's not something that he needs. It's an amazing idea of how to portray this character that no one focuses on at all. From a practical point of view, I can understand. I mean, on stage or screen, to have an entire cast never ever ever touch this one particular actor, that would be very difficult. But it is doable, and my God, just how different it would be absolutely brilliant. Imagine even in the softer, quiet moments where Peter rushes to try and save Tinkerbell, or where he's persuading Wendy and the boys to fly out of the window, or giving Wendy the kite. Imagine if even then, in those moments, no one touches him. Just to confirm, I'm not talking about giving Peter like a wide berth as though he's a non-mask wearer in a crowded supermarket in the middle of 2020. No, I just mean that physically, nobody else can touch him. There's always a tiny little bit of space, whether it's by millimeters, just there's always space around him. And so he is tying the kite around Wendy, and then she starts to fly away and she goes to hug or touch him, but there's something that stops her. I always imagine that if someone did go for a hug and Peter didn't jump back and he did let them, it would be like an air hug. Like instinctively, they wouldn't touch him. Partly because they wouldn't be able to, and partly because just it would be the most natural thing in the unnatural way would be for, instead of going in and closing for the hug, it would be a sort of air hug with your arms. And on stage it might look fine because the audience might not even notice. The audience might just think it's an exaggerated stage hug. And I think that's really cool because the audience doesn't have to be in on it. The audience doesn't have to know. It could be done so subtly that if they do notice, it's an interesting sort of, but if they don't, then the story isn't different. It's just a dynamic between Peter and everybody else, which I really love and I really, really wish people would do. You know, rather than doing stupid stories where they make him grow up, which is the one thing that he literally would never do. I'm looking at you, Hook. I have so much to say about the movie Hook. That's another video. Or, I don't know, other versions which were perfectly good because they had friggin' Jason Isaacs as an amazing Hook. And he was great. And then they messed the whole damn movie up by having Peter suddenly be in love with Wendy and kissy, kissy, kissy. What the actual frick? I'm picky about my Peter Pan adaptations in case you couldn't tell. Other cool snippets we get about Peter and his character are his flightiness and forgetful nature, often working in tandem. Think about those famous directions to the Neverland, second to the right and straight on till morning. Yep, he made those up. They just came off the top of his head at the time. The next chapter in the book, Peter and Wendy after that, starts with a confession from Barry saying that even if birds carrying maps were given those directions, they would never be able to find the Neverland because it just isn't true. Also, I'm going to get super picky now. There was never a star. Disney added the star. It was never second star to the right and straight on till morning. Disney added that, I'm pretty sure for aesthetic star-related reasons. If you read one of the books and it says star in it, it's probably a more modern version where they've added it in. It's not particularly important, but I am picky about my adaptations, and so I'm going to be picky. Now, we could use all of that to just simply say that Peter is a liar. He's that tricksy liar who steals away children in the dead of night. And sure, I mean, that's one take on it, but it's very obvious, isn't it? Gonna do a hot take on Peter Pan. It's like, oh yeah, he steals your children. I mean, yeah, but they all also came back, which I never understood. My biggest problem with Wendy and the Lost Boys as characters was that they gave up the Neverland. Fantasy Island, where you can fight pirates, have adventures and fly, or going to school. To be fair, Barry does describe them as utter dolts for not staying on the island, and the boys realise it too. But it's too late, they've come back, they grow up. But instead of all that, I see this as another example of how Peter is just constantly living in the present moment. He will never get to tomorrow or future decisions because he is always living in the today, the here and now, which is probably why he's so flighty and forgetful, because it's just moment after moment after moment and then it's gone. In fact, he forgets his adventures, his enemies, and even his friends. We see a lot of evidence for this. At the end of the story, he has forgotten both Tinkerbell and Captain Hook. Now both of them are dead. Another moment that I really love of just quite dark forgetfulness is actually on the flight to the Neverland. Most productions will show you the children taking off out of the Darlings nursery, and then they will cut to the Lost Boys and the Pirates and the Indians and the crocodile in the Neverland. And then the children will arrive, Wendy gets shot by the arrow, spoilers, you know, and the story moves on. However, in the book, Peter and Wendy, there is almost an entire chapter dedicated to the flight to the Neverland. And it is not fun for the Darling children. Peter constantly gets bored, and he will fly off to go and have other adventures because he can fly so much faster than they are. He gets bored, he flies away, he comes back often laughing about something really funny that he has now forgotten, or he's got mermaid scales still stuck to him but couldn't tell you where, when, or how he'd got them. This infuriates the Darling children who have no idea what he's been doing, and in fact sometimes he forgets them as well. On several occasions he comes flying back from an adventure and is about to go right past them until they call out and remind him who they are. He is fairly apologetic for this, but it still keeps happening. So a huge part of the journey to the Neverland that most people don't know about is that the Darling children were predominantly miserable, hungry, and alone. All of that is a piece of the darker shade of Peter Pan's character, and I think it demonstrates that he is not a lost child in need of a mother, or love, or touch, or reassurance. He is just the eternal spirit of freedom and youth. He is carefree and uncaring, and it's perfect in its imperfection.
At the very end of the play, Peter proclaims to Wendy and Mrs. Darling, "I want always to be a little boy and to have fun." Then there's a stage direction which reads, "So perhaps he thinks, but it is only his greatest pretend." And of course I have a dark interpretation of this as well. I see this as not a pretense where he really does want to grow up, but the pretense is in the reason why he doesn't. He proclaims that it is just because he wants to be a little boy and to have fun, but I think it's because he's afraid. I mean, think about it. Every interaction Peter has had with grown-ups has, at least from his point of view, been bad. His own parents were wishing away his youth, imagining what he was going to be when he became a man, so he ran away. Then he fights and battles with other adversaries like the pirates. Other grown-ups like Mrs. Darling try to force Peter to grow up. Wendy even tries to force this on him as well, and becomes jealous and hateful of every other female presence in his life. The Lost Boys grow up and abandon him, so all in total, grown-ups, and therefore growing up itself, is marred for Peter. He becomes afraid. He doesn't want to become another cruel, enforcing grown-up to do all the things that grown-ups have done to him. So I believe his greatest pretend is in telling himself and others that it is a want and not fear.
So this is just the way that I cover up my tattoos as Peter. I leave this one partly because it sort of fits the aesthetic, and partly because it would take a lot more time to cover. And but yeah, the ones on my wrist, I just feel, you know, they can be easily covered, so why not? This is my normal Peter Pan aesthetic. This is the Peter Pan that I film my commission videos with. I need to do some today, actually. There is a few birthday messages I need to do as Peter Pan. If you would like some birthday messages, or just any messages as Peter Pan or Lucien or Mollymauk, then let me know. Hit me up. Hit me up on my Ko-fi. So, I'm going to go and do some videos right now, but this is the normal Peter Pan aesthetic. It gets a lot darker from here. Glitter freckles.
Son of a...
Watch your language.
Fun.
You're close.
Frick.
Don't test me.
Shoot, dang it.
Oh my god.
Ass.
Okay, I have just finished filming a bunch of things, and I can't think of anything else that I need to film. I'll probably think of something super important after I've finished all of these crazy makeup looks, but in the meantime, I'm going to move on to my next makeup. The first possible demise Peter could have faced that I am going to turn into a makeup look is when he nearly drowned on Maruna's Rock. That's right, my Pinterest is now full of drowned makeup aesthetics. Who knew there were so many of them? Let's do it. Oh, I'm so sad to say goodbye to the glitter.
So weird, but so helpful. Right from the start, death doesn't seem to faze Peter very much. He remarks quite casually on how nearly all the fairies are dead now, and skips around the room when he explains how a child proclaiming that they do not believe in fairies means a fairy will fall down dead, perhaps because the concept is so alien to him, this eternal boy untroubled by the Reaper, or perhaps he simply forgets any knowledge he has enough to be scared. On a slightly lighter but still death-related note, Peter is said to accompany dead children part of the way to the afterlife so they won't be afraid. Next brush Peter has with death comes when the Lost Boys show him Wendy's presumed dead body. Peter removes the arrow, simply saying, "Wendy is dead." The stage direction describes how he is not so much pained by this as puzzled. This attitude continues on Maruna's Rock, where Peter tells Wendy this is a fearfully important rock. It is called Maruna's Rock. Sailors are marooned, you know, when their captain leaves them on a rock and sails away. He goes on to explain how they don't live long as their hands are tied so they cannot swim. Again, he tells it like a light fact, a thing he knows and a thing that happens, nothing more. Then we come to perhaps the most prominent and important of Peter's brushes with death, when he stands on Maruna's Rock as the waters rise, being unable to swim or fly, and Peter believes he's going to drown. He faces death and says, "To die will be an awfully big adventure." And I believe him.
Next up, we are doing If Peter Had Got Poisoned by Captain Hook's Poison. Now, the poison was distilled from the red of his eye, so first of all I was going to do it sort of like red, but poison is more generally known as green, and so I am going to be using green to represent the poison. I'm going to try and do some sort of poison veins and stuff, so we will see how this goes.
Speaking of that poisoned medicine, if Tinkerbell didn't care about Peter, or had not realised what was going on, or hadn't been in time to drink the medicine in his place, Peter would almost certainly have died at this point in the story. We must be glad of Tinkerbell and the Neverbird for saving Peter.
I really don't want it to look like I've just got plants growing out of my mouth. This will be exciting.
Despite being rescued from his own dark demise twice by this point, and of course Wendy not really being dead early on in the story, Peter does have to face death, really and properly, and head on, now, when Tinkerbell has drunk the poison for him to save him, and her light is now going out. Desperate not to lose her, Peter cries out to all of the children dreaming of the Neverland, imploring them to clap their hands if they believe in fairies. Wonderfully, Tinkerbell is saved. But you would be foolhardy to think that yet another in a long line of near misses would make Peter humbled or even careful. His ongoing relationship with death is a turbulent one, but ultimately Peter continually brushes the thought off. It is no different here. As soon as Tink is up and well again, Peter is at once out of the tree and in hot pursuit of Hook and the pirates, with another gleeful proclamation. Hook or me this time. Peter is dismissive of the fear of death as soon as it is not right before him. I think this will always continue. After all, nothing, not even death, could weigh this ethereal, eternal boy down.
I am loving this. I think I have a poison bottle somewhere too. Hold on.
Alrighty, so the final look I am going to do is for a canonical final moment in which Peter could have died. His battle with Captain Hook. The two are seemingly destined to go after each other. Hook for the cockiness of the impossible boy that just niggles at him so, and Peter for revenge and mostly fun. And so they fight, clashing blade on blade and hook upon steel. Of course, Peter is victorious, and Hook goes to the crocodile, but what if he had not? If Peter's cockiness had lowered his guard, if a swipe or parry had just missed the mark, the ethereal boy would have been clawed and run through into oblivion. There are several moments during their final confrontation in the book and the play where Hook cannot see Peter properly. He is literally untouchable, if we're going by the stage direction I mentioned earlier, and I think we should be. He is like an ethereal spirit of youth and freedom, and Hook cannot see or touch him. But in this scenario, what if he had? I'm loving that gash work on the side of my face. Just look at that. Gnarly as hell. There is so much about death that I couldn't even get into in this video because I didn't have the time. But I just really wanted to focus in on it, partly because the makeup looks were cool and also because it's such a huge part of the story. Despite it being all around him, Peter continues to evade death and will forever do so. He is both unmoved by it and unharmed by it. This can be seen as a tragedy, but I, much like Peter, choose to see it as a triumph.
Okay, this is my final look. I have been slain by Captain Hook. Can you see all the little... So this is the final point where Peter could have died. I'm going to take these out now really carefully. Oh, yeah. And I am now going to go and take some pictures and film TikToks. Bringing all the joy today, bringing all the love. I'll be back. Alright, so that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for sticking with me through this, well, the utter chaos that has been this evening. I had fun. I enjoy makeup. I enjoy characters. I really enjoy Peter Pan. I hope that you have enjoyed my ramblings about Peter Pan. I assume most of it's going to be in voiceover because I realised quite early on that I had to concentrate while I was doing the makeup. All I will say is that whatever interpretation you have of the story is absolutely your own, and as always, I love other people's interpretations, and that is always fine. This is just my ramblings of a character I've been obsessed with since I was about this tall, and one day hope to play on the stage again. Here's hoping that the theatres will be able to open at some point in the next few years. Who knows? So as always, if you would like to support me in this utter chaos, or suggest or request something else for me to do, particularly for the Monday Madness videos, I am totally up for suggestions for those. Last week was a sponsored video. I've got plenty of ideas, but if you want to throw in some of your own, chuck them in the suggestions and I will get to them, or if you want me to get to it post-haste, then chuck me stuff on Ko-fi or Patreon or whatever. Thank you for watching. This has been Monday Madness with me, the very dead Peter Pan. Peter Pan is always going to be my favourite character. Mollymauk is a close second, but Peter Pan will always and forever be my best boy. So I am going to wash all this off, and I think I'm going to go and play the forest with Cat and Bro, because I haven't mentioned them yet this video, so hey Cat and Bro! So thank you all for watching. Yeah, this was insane. I am glad that I did this. This was fun. I will see you next Monday, and I will throw up some updates in the meantime. Thank you all for watching. I love you all. Goodbye, Jellyspoons. Goodbye. I go when we get in trouble. I go. There's just one thing to do. I just send for Tiger Lily. I just send for Peter Pan.